Hey guys, feeding time here at the farm. You hear some noises, that's what it is. Listen, I've been working a long time to get this video up. And this video is basically about a story of inspiration. That when you think that the end is near or that you are done, Jesus can turn it around. Now, if you don't know Jesus, I don't know what you're going to do, but check out this story of my best friend's daughter, what she went through. She went from meth addict to master degree holder and working a very important job. If you know someone that's got a story like that, that's hooked on drugs and they think there's nothing they can do, share this with them. And I pray that it helps them. But share this out. God bless. Lord, guide us through it. Guide Melissa's words. We ask them humbly in the name of Jesus Christ, our Savior. Amen. I'm sitting here with Melissa. She is a family friend, daughter of my best friend. And Melissa has probably the strongest testimony of overcoming anybody I've ever heard. And we're going to talk to her about it. She's agreed graciously to be interviewed, and will be the first interview that I have on my new channel, which is designed to give people hope and to see that many people will see this interview and never think she could have done what she's done. So we're going to get into this and you'll see what I'm talking about. So Melissa had some challenges with drugs. And I can remember me and her daddy up in the worst parts of town looking for her, like going out at night, trying to find her. Her daddy, her mama praying. We'll let her give her testimony on that, but those prayers is what brought her through that, no question, because at the time, she was lost. The devil had her, and that's unfortunately how that happens. And if you don't have praying parents, or as people praying for you, I don't know how you get out of it. And I think that's the ones that don't.
Well, Lord knows you're not praying for yourself when you're in
That's
the middle
right.
of it.
You're not. You're just thinking about what you're doing with drugs. And I can remember me and her daddy up in the worst parts of town looking for her, like going out at night, trying to find her. Her daddy, her mama praying. We'll let her give her testimony on that, but those prayers is what brought her through that, no question, because at the time, she was lost. The devil had her, and that's unfortunately how that happens. And if you don't have praying parents, or as people praying for you, I don't know how you get out of it. And I think that's the ones that don't. So guys, this is the praying mom and dad I told you about. This is my buddy. And he and I were the ones out looking for Melissa. I want to give you the little bit of backstory. So I'm up here at my buddy's house, bestest buddy. I wonder if we can have bestest buddies. Mountain Man Jim Reddick. We got a story to tell you that is super inspirational. It involves his daughter Melissa, and I interviewed her, and it'll come after this. But Jimmy, back in the day when we were young, this was way back. I think she was, if I remember, like 10 or 12, something like that, maybe 12, 10.
14.
14.
Just turned 14.
You called me one night or one day, and she had run away, and we needed to go into some of the worst parts of town to try to find her. What can you tell me real briefly what happened?
Just through word of mouth, we had heard there was a blonde girl in a drug house, and of course Melissa was blonde haired then, like brownish blonde hair. So we located a few of our buddies through the PD and made us a couple searches. Maybe not exactly the way they were supposed to have been done, but for a father looking for his daughter that's never been missing before, never running away, here she might possibly be in a drug house being abused, and we did what we needed to do to get in and found out it wasn't her, luckily. So
Now,
took care of what was there, but we just kept searching after that.
Now, she was gone a good long time, but I can tell you I know, but to tell the people Were y'all praying for her in that time?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
Praying pretty much nonstop. Us and a lot of other people, family,
Yep.
church, people at Life and Praise Church at that time.
No,
Praying, fire department, family, her work family at Bond Clinic.
there's no greater fear than not knowing where your daughter is.
Robbie's just kind of a natural born worrier, so
Yeah.
it was driving her nuts.
She was a perfect child, very intelligent, highly intelligent, but somewhat naive when it comes to people and the way they work. But
Well, at that age, most of us
she
are.
went to school every day and come home every day like every kid did. And one particular day she didn't come home. And I called all of her friends and no one knew where she was. And then her friend starts telling me that she hasn't really been hanging out with them that much. And called the police to report her missing, and they wouldn't do anything. They said she had to be missing 24 hours before I could list her. So the next morning I go up to the school, and this is in October. I go up to the school to see if she happened to show up at school, and she didn't. And the resource officer came in and told me that they pulled her records and she had already missed 30 days of school.
And no one called you.
And the school never contacted us.
Now, you got to realize, too, guys, this was back, 15, 20 years ago?
97.
97, 98.
So
Still in a mid to later 90s.
it's a little better now, but back then you could just slip through the crack if it wasn't for
Back then,
parents.
we asked the school resource officer, how come we weren't notified that she's been missing school? Because we could have stopped it. As soon as she missed the first day, I'd have locked her down and took her to school, dropped her off at the front door, walked her in, whatever it took.
She was gone for 10 days that first time. And I happened to work for a retail chain. They were my previous job was with a retail chain, and once they heard the news, they took one of her pictures and turned it into hundreds of pictures and took them to all of their stores, and within a few days we had her picture posted on every convenience store, gas station,
Phone
whatever
booth.
restaurant would let us put it up. And the way we got her back home was she was actually in a town, a few towns away, and walked into a Circle K convenience store with this group of people that she was with, and saw her missing picture on the door as she walked in. And it hit her that she didn't know she had even been gone for 10 days because she had been in drug-induced stupor for 10 days. And she dialed 911 and turned herself in, and they brought her home. But by that time, she was already addicted to meth because that's what they had gave her.
Now, unfortunately, that wasn't the end of the story, but it went on, and everybody's still praying. And I got to tell you, if it wasn't for God's hand in that situation, I just don't think she'd have made it. God had her, what she's doing today is what I believe was his intentions, and she needed to come through that, because you'll hear her story in a minute, what she does, and it's amazing. There's no question that God's hand was on that.
She has quite a testimony. When I tell people about her, I just start out saying she went from meth addict to master's degree
That's something,
on
ain't it?
her own. So.
A lot of life experiences that she gets to use in her current career, and that's what makes her such an excellent person at her current job that she'll tell you about. But
You're exactly right. And people, as she did for a degree, but people will say, no one's going to forgive me of my past. Those very things that God uses now, yes, he does. And he actually turns it into.
He turned her weakness into strength.
Sure did.
and helps lots of people now with their experiences of what she went through. She gets to work with a lot of people going through the same thing. So
She's already been contacted by people she's helped, but I say in this video at the end that if anybody's watching this and Melissa was instrumental in changing their life, contact us. And I'd like to interview them, because that's how God works. He might take Melissa and what she's doing and what she went through and then change somebody else's life. And I'm sure he has. There's no question in my mind. Now, whether we'll find him or not, that could be, because she's way up here in a different state from where all this occurred. So anything else other than God's good?
God is
And are you proud of her today?
extremely,
Extremely proud.
extremely.
She helped us through. We helped her purchase a house right next door to us, and when Robbie was in the hospital for 27 days with COVID, a lot of other prayers were answered, and here she's sitting today. But Melissa was instrumental in taking care of us, because
You had it at the same
I
time.
had it at the same time, and she took care of me.
That's a
while
blessing.
Taking care of her mother at the hospital. She
And
was
her children at home and working.
children at home, and then our youngest son, her brother, was in another hospital in a different county here. So she was going between here, Hardy Hospital, Transylvania Hospital, running it all, running ragged, but she did it.
Good girl. I
I
told her
think-
I'm extremely proud of
I
her.
think as proud as the thing that I'm the most proud of isn't her, the fact that she beat the addiction or educated herself or even became, you know, the person that she is with her career and how successful she is at it. I think the thing I'm most proud is the relationship she has with Christ at this point. That's what makes me proud.
Yep.
I turn to her a lot of times for counsel, and she talks me down a lot when I'm at my weakest. So
Yeah, I can tell you, Melissa's story is not even done. It's
no,
just started. All right, the moral of this story, people,
pray.
pray. Pray for
works.
your children. Everybody that I know that's had this story, there was parents, many people praying.
Well, Lord knows you're not praying for yourself when you're in
That's
the middle
right.
of it.
You're not. You're just thinking about what you're doing. So we're gonna get into some questions about that. So Melissa, can you just kind of walk us through the beginning, how it started, how old you were, and like where, how it kind of started and where it led to?
Well, it probably started when I was about 12.
12.
I didn't really fit in with any of the cliques in school. Cliques were a really big thing. And so I hung out with the misfits, and I fancied myself as kind of an outsider. So I started skipping school with them and smoking marijuana and just hanging out. Mostly what I thought was harmless stuff. But then
Now at this time your mom and dad was together. You had a good.
they were together. They'd had a rough patch in their marriage, prior to that, but they were together.
And so it wasn't like you were living in a foster home or
No,
something like that.
I wasn't abused or neglected or anything really. I mean, I had some resentment for some of the hard times they had gone through, but I had a great foundation. So really, I did it to myself. I just didn't feel like I fit in. God recently gave me a revelation about that I'll get into later. But I just started skipping school, hanging out with that crowd. That went on through 6th and 7th grade. I hadn't tried anything harder than marijuana. And then when I got into 9th grade, I started skipping school some more. And during one of those days skipping school, met some older guys, and I tried meth for the first time. And
Is that guy still alive? Do you know?
I believe he is. Yes, been in and out of prison his whole life.
And in high school, your dad said, I forget how many days that you had missed that he didn't even know the school wasn't calling and telling
I
them.
had missed 80 days, and they had never gotten a phone call until the truancy officer started calling. Yeah.
That's a failure of the system.
Yeah. So I would ride the bus to school, and then I would get off the bus and walk right across the street and get picked up. And
How old was that guy?
he was, at the time, he was probably about 25.
Just wonder what his motives was. 17, 18-year-old?
Yeah,
You were
his
7.
motives were exactly what you would think his motives would be.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I tried that the first time, and that hit me so hard that was the first time I disappeared. The first time I ran away for 10 days. I had no intention of actually running away. I was just so high that I didn't know where I was at for 10 days.
So when you did it the first time, you kept doing it? I mean,
After I did it the first time I did it, my missing pictures went up everywhere. I imagine that's probably when y'all were kicking in doors and things. After the 10th day, I kind of came down long enough to come to my senses, and I saw my missing picture on a payphone, and I called the police on myself and had them bring me home.
thank God.
But I came home to some rules and some regulations, and I didn't appreciate that, so I kept on taking off after that.
So I'm going to let you just say what you're comfortable in, how far down the deep devil hole, because at this point, the devil done got hold to you, and you didn't, I'm sure, believe your parents had your best cared enough or had your best well-being at heart, so you started just doing whatever.
Well, when I ran away, I met other teenagers, or maybe even 17, 18-year-olds. It's amazing too how other runaways find each other. I met a lot of other runaways that were my age, but we would find these houses that had parents that let these kids do whatever they wanted. I mean, they could use drugs in the house, they could go where they wanted, and so when I'd go back home, I wanted my parents, at the time I thought that was cool,
Yeah.
and I wanted my parents to do that for me, just let me be free, and they weren't going to do that. So
So I'll just say, if you're one of those parents, you are enabling this.
yeah, that's the truth. And I just kept taking off, but the more I took off, the deeper I got. I was in many dangerous situations. I was walking down the street with a boy once and just ended up getting shot at by a van full of people that apparently the boy owed him lots of money. God protected me. I mean, I've been shot at about 4 times total and never been hit. So
If you have never been, like if you hadn't been in law enforcement or been in the drug side,
yeah,
you can't, it's hard for you to understand the crowds that she was in. Like, these
Yeah.
people don't care. They do things they don't think about anymore. Their conscience is gone. And what they think about killing, raping, anything, it's not, they don't even care anymore.
yeah, I met people from the Mexican cartels, from different gangs. Getting truly addicted to a drug like meth or any other drug is really expensive. One thing I never did was I never did prostitute myself, but I did find myself being raped a few times. I found myself drugs being laced, me being knocked unconscious, partially paralyzed, and woke up to some really bad situations. And I wouldn't report it because I felt like I put myself there and it was my fault. So I decided to support my own habit, and I started selling it. And I
As
became
many
the
do.
dealer. Yeah.
As many do.
So
And is there money in it?
not if you're supporting your own habit. Not really. I mean, there's not so much money in it as there is stuff. People will bring you stuff. They'll bring you cars. They'll bring you stuff, jewelry. But no, it was really just to support my own habit.
Well, my time in law enforcement, I found that for a while, it is a ton of money. You got more money than...
There's a lot of money changing hands.
Yes, yeah,
But it just goes right back into the drug. It
That's
never
right.
really,
that's right.
you don't have anything to show for it. I mean,
That's-
you're not going to see very many meth dealers living in big, fancy houses.
You're going to end up dead or... Yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a reason for that. But yeah, so I supported my habit. That's when I met my first husband, who also sold drugs, and he was 15 years older than me. We got married and sold drugs together. He was very controlling and very abusive, and you know, he cheated and he disappeared for days and played mind games. Another odd protection from God, he shot at me once when I was trying to leave. I was trying to back out. I thought, I'm done with this, because he was hitting me, and I was going to leave and maybe go to Mom's, try to get better. Backing out, he put 3 bullet holes through my windshield right in front of my face. Never touched me.
There was an angel there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I put myself in a lot of crazy situations where I shouldn't have walked out, and a lot of people don't walk out. You know, you get a little bit of survivor's guilt too.
I can tell you this whole time her parents are praying. The whole time. That never ended.
And
That's
they
what
didn't know.
protected her.
They didn't know
Yeah, they didn't know
I was going
everything,
through.
but I know they were praying.
Yeah, I told them a lot of this stuff after the fact, and you know, my dad wanted to know why I didn't tell him. Well, he wouldn't have been a firefighter much
Yeah.
longer if I had. You know?
Yeah, he's the one that'll go off if somebody's hurting his children.
Yeah. Well, him and I stayed married for 15 years, but when I finally was going to get clean, I didn't have any real motivation for getting clean other than that I was going to die. I mean, the devil really had a hold of me. I was suicidal. I was playing Russian roulette. I was stuffing capsules full of as much meth as I could and just trying to see how much my body could take, because I had this idea that if this is what my flesh wants, this is what it's going to get. And I never did die.
Let me just say to you, there's a reason why she didn't die, and we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Because she should have died.
I did get arrested. I wanted to get clean to save my marriage. That was probably my biggest motivation initially. I wanted to get clean to save my marriage. I didn't really have any ideas of actually like changing our lifestyle, just not doing drugs. We got in a big fight about that, about me wanting to get clean, and he beat me up pretty bad. And he had some warrants out for some gun charges and things, trafficking charges. The police show up the next day to look for him, and I lied to the police and said he wasn't in the house. They found him in the house, and they arrested me too for lying. Oddly enough, I had been cleaning out my car that morning because I was going to get clean. That was how I was thinking. And I found paraphernalia and baggies in my car, and I was putting them in my pockets to take them into the house to throw them away. And when they came, it was all still in my pockets.
They would have never believed what your story either.
They did. I
They
mean,
would
they said,
never believe that.
they said, "Do you have anything on you?" And I said, "Yes, I do." I was going to throw it away.
I'm going to tell you, as a cop, previous cop, they just wouldn't have believed. They'd have been like, yeah, right, we've
It
heard
was
that.
the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went to jail. My parents would not bond me out. My aunt paid my bond, and I got out on pretrial release. And I'll tell you what, we lost everything in less than 24 hours. He stayed in jail for a few months, and I got out, we had a house. I mean, we had some things. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff when you're selling drugs. 2 of the cars were gone, bunk beds were gone, all the dogs were gone, all my jewelry was gone, all of our friends
Druggies.
immediately swarmed the house and took everything. So I got out, and the landlord kicked me out, so I was on the streets. And the 2 months he was in jail and the 2 months I was on the street, I got arrested one more time for failing the drug screen for my pretrial officer. And then I got back out and used real hard and heavy on the streets, nowhere to sleep, sleeping on picnic tables. And that was probably the lowest, my rock bottom for sure. So when he got out of jail, he had a few months clean at that point, and he found me. And we stayed in a hotel, and we decided we'll get clean together, and we did get clean together. God helped us find a place to live. The hurricanes lasted 2004 or 2014, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Is it 14?
Charlie, I guess.
Yeah. Hurricane Charlie and Francis and Jean came through and destroyed Polk County when we were living in the car. And
So you probably got some help because,
we found an old man with some beautiful duplexes on a lake that it had torn the roofs off of all of them but about 2. And he needed help fixing those roofs, and well, my husband knew how to do all those things, so we ended up with a place to live like that. But I'll tell you a funny story in that in-between time. He had a warrant for a failure to appear after he got out of jail. I told him, look, if we're trying to be clean, you need to call and turn yourself in and handle this warrant. The cop that came, we had a hotel room that night. The officer that came to pick him up was very nice, let him go inside, get dressed and everything, and I sat outside talking to him, and I was about 100 pounds. I was still really skinny, had just barely detoxed at this point. I looked rough, and I was explaining to the officer, this is what we're doing, you know, he was well known, they knew who he was, so they knew what we'd been doing. I told him we're getting clean, and so he's handling this warrant, and you know, we're going to get clean, and I can't remember his name, but he said, well, I'm going to remember you, you better stay clean. Fast forward a year later, I'm finally going to court to dispose of my charges from being arrested, my felony possession charges. I kept riding it out. I kept telling the judge, I'm not pleading to a felony. I want to work with kids one day. I kept telling him that. That was my story at the time. I don't know if I really meant it at the time, but I just was trying to give the judge a reason. But I go to court. I'm driving to court on a suspended license, but I had to get to court. So I get put on probation. They bring my felony down. They withhold adjudication. So technically it's not a conviction. And then I get a year of felony probation. I'm leaving court with my probation papers, and I get pulled over. This cop gets behind me. I know I'm getting pulled over. I start doing the right turn, start making right turns. And finally, I just pulled over before he turned his lights on because I knew he was pulling me over. And this cop gets there, and he's pulling me over, and I tell him I don't have a license. It's suspended, but I had no way to get to court. And I held up the papers, and I'm like, I just got put on probation. And he said, well, you just violated that. I said, I guess I did. And I was getting out, getting ready to get handcuffed. He's about to handcuff me, and he sees a tattoo on my back. And then he said, are you the same girl from the hotel about a year ago that said you were getting clean? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, you look a lot different. I was about 30 pounds heavier. I said, I'm still clean. I said, I just had no way to get to court. And he let me go because he didn't want to
Be the one that started it back.
Yeah, he didn't want to start me going downhill. He said,
Not
you
to
go this
mention
way,
that-
don't go that way where I patrol, and you get home.
Not to mention that I'll say God was intervening. We'll believe that.
Definitely. I do believe that.
Yes.
That's the reason. It wasn't even his patrol area. He didn't patrol close to the courthouse. He patrolled Lake Wales. So,
We're going to fast forward a little bit in the interest of time of the video because I don't want my cameras to die. So there's a reason why God was saving her. There's no question, and you can only see this over time, and that's been true in my life, and it was true in your life. So you said that you had a dream, and it could have been just something at the time that you were saying to get out of trouble, but
yeah.
what did your dream become?
It later became that I wanted to be a counselor for adolescents who were like I was, who wanted to run away, and I just wanted to be a counselor for them because I saw many of them that I felt were useless, and none of them had ever been through anything. So
The best counselors are the ones that's been there,
yeah,
because when that person starts maybe trying to run game, she knows. But also when they say, you don't know what it's like, she says, yes, I do.
yeah,
I've been there. There is no better person that can get to those kids. And I fully believe that's what this thing came full circle about. Mm-hmm. And so you want to become a counselor.
yeah. So him and I stayed clean together for almost 8 years, and during the tail end of that time, I started working on a bachelor's degree online. My 2 kids that I've adopted got placed with me through Department of Children and Families, and so I started to develop things to work towards that I didn't want to lose. While I was online, God put a lot of things in place to put me where He wanted me to be. I had a project where I was supposed to interview some agency that helps people. I ended up interviewing a woman at a women's drug rehab center. And during the interview, she handed me an application and said, bring this back tomorrow. I said, I'm not looking for a job. And she said, well, you're going to bring that back tomorrow. Well, I ended up there for 4 years doing counseling and case management for women, even some of the people I had sold drugs to. By the end of that 4 years, I had finished my bachelor's degree, And I was in the process then of getting a divorce because he had relapsed and started being abusive again.
And you done had enough of that lifestyle, you know.
I
you
had
didn't.
grown then. I had no more triggers about going back. I had grown. And I had this moment. I'd been saved. He wouldn't go to church with me. I had a moment in the house where a song came on and it just hit me and something came over me. I hit the floor, and I believe that's the first time I ever felt the Holy Spirit. And that's when being clean changed for me. It wasn't just being clean, it was using it going forward. I just wasn't sure what I was going to do yet. So when I graduated, something just told me to go into child welfare. I'd been helping these women. A lot of them had case plans. A lot of them had lost their kids. But man, the stories that I heard from them, every one of them had childhood trauma of the likes you wouldn't believe, human trafficking, you name it. And
I know you've told me some stories, and it's terrible to believe that this kind of stuff goes on. It is, and I don't know, someday you probably ought to write a book or something, because I'm convinced that the average Joe just don't believe this stuff happens, and it does every day.
there were stories that these women told that I didn't believe until I started seeing the scars on their bodies and things like that. Because it was residential. I'd see them take their shirt off.
I remember some you told me,
Yeah.
and it's so not only did God bring her out of that, and she had a little dream, that just kept on going and going and going, and now a lot of this occurred in Florida, and she moved up here following her parents to North Carolina, which we're in North Carolina now. That's why it's cold. And the
It's
leaves,
cold.
it's about 50 or something today, and I'm still in shorts. But you ultimately worked all the way up. Can you say to a degree? You don't have to say where you work, but what is your job now? What do you do now?
Well, now I've ended up getting a master's degree also. And right now I'm an in-home treatment provider in child protective services. I've done adoptions, I've done foster care, case management, I've done mediation between families, and I've done investigations. Now I'm doing the in-home treatment, which is really when there's an investigation and they do find that the children are not safe, but with some help we could make them safe without taking them out of their home. The families are willing to try to work on the problem. That's where I'm at. I'm kind of that intervention between the investigation and us taking the children. So I'm trying to keep the kids in the home.
But you've been all the way to where the kids can't stay, and you got to go testify in court for hours
Yeah.
to save these children, because you recognize these signs that,
And sometimes you fight the system that you work for too. There's,
yeah,
there are bad apples everywhere.
yeah. When they say kids fall through the cracks, I'll tell you, it's the same way in law enforcement. It's oftentimes she knows it and she's fighting it, but the system just trying to protect the rights of the
Yeah.
people, and then the kids end up dying, and that happens unfortunately too much.
It does, but you never hear the stories about the ones that we save. And there are a lot more that we save, but we can't tell those stories because they're confidential.
That's why we're shooting in just such a generic setting, and I can't show anything of what she does, but there's hundreds, if not thousands, of kids that are saved. And this
And families that we keep together. We don't take them all.
this is why I wanted to interview Melissa, is I am convinced God knew all this stuff way long time ago and saved her in all them situations to bring her to where she is today, and she's fulfilling what God wants her to do.
God has had a hand in everything. I mean, He's standing at the end of our life. He knows everything that we're going to go through. I mean, on top of the addiction and the abuse and everything else I went through 15 years of infertility. I did adopt those 2 kids that were placed with me, and I was happy with that. Me and God have been getting closer over the years, magnificently closer. And, I move up here, and a lot of spiritual things happened in my life, and now I've had 2 biological children.
2 children.
In my late 30s, and His timing is just perfect.
It is.
I mean, imagine if I'd have had children by my ex-husband and not my current husband, just it would have been, being tied to the abuse for forever. But God has his hand in everything. It's just when you're in the moment, you don't see it. But it's really cool. I feel blessed to have come full circle to be able to connect all those dots.
And I know exactly what you're talking about. It's happened in my life. Someday I'll talk about it. It's happened in her husband's life. I'll probably interview him, how the Lord brought them two together. And the moral of the story, and one of the reasons why I'm doing these videos, is for people to know that things can change. Now, if you don't know God and you're just living out in the streets and the devil's got you, probably things are probably not going to change. And when you don't feel when you feel unworthy, I'm sure you felt many times that you weren't worthy of the things that happened, that when you were being blessed, as I did. But when God will overlook. He'll overlook and he'll forgive. He promises that. And he'll take you to places that you just can't imagine.
I'd been clean for over 10 years before I even fully understood what his grace was. I believed in him. I was saved, but I mean, the growth it never stops. It never stops.
Right.
So.
Well, Melissa, I appreciate you doing the interview. I hope people see this video, and they will. I'm convinced of that. And it will change some people. If some of you are in that situation that Melissa was in years ago, and you want to reach out to her, send me an email at michaeljaysten.com, and that's michaeljaysten.com. I'm gonna put it on the screen as well, and then I'll forward that email to Melissa. And she's a busy girl, busy lady, I should say, with family and work and all that. But
I do check my emails every day.
and if you're one of those people that need to talk, and I have always been that way, if we can help somebody and change somebody's life, then that's exactly what we're going to do.
Yes, I'm willing to talk to anyone that's going through it.
And things can change when you think they can't. Things can change in dramatic ways.
That's when they change. When you think they can't, that's when they start changing.
That's true. It's right at the worst of your times, and you're like,
well,
you're
ready,
giving up.
You're ready to die, and you may even be asking God to kill you, and He will kill you, but it's not in the way that you think.
Yep.
He kills that part of you that you don't need anymore, so that you can live for Him. It just comes over time.